These are 10 players who I love drafting in fantasy football, and you need to be aggressive getting them on your team. If you already have a couple on your roster, you are going to be in for a very nice season. Starting at number 10, it's Jaylen Waddle. A lot of people are going to fade the uber talented receiver because he's coming off a very unlucky, unfortunate year. In the injury department, he was in and out of several different games, consistently banged up. And in the touchdown department, as he had a career low 4 touchdowns, he finished as the wide receiver 24 in fantasy points per game. So there's no other way to cut it. Last year, if you drafted Waddle, you were very disappointed. But looking deeper at some of the advanced metrics, he still was getting better, was improving. He set career highs in yards per route run, targets per route. And people forget that in 2022, when Tyreek Hill was on the roster, Waddle was really good. 75 receptions, over 1,300 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, and was the wide receiver 12 in fantasy. So this is a guy that has already shown us that he can be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. He's coming off a bad year, but it's the talent profile, it's the situation, it's the age for Waddle that you bet on. Like Tyreek Hill is 30 years old. Even if Hill starts to slightly decline, that could open up the door for Waddle, who is a guy on an elite Miami offense with a good quarterback in Tua. It's a wide receiver friendly scheme in Miami, a brilliant play caller with Mike McDaniel. Like, these are the guys that you bet on when people are scared. Look at the talent, look at the situation, understand what happened last year and how it could look drastically different this season. Like, Waddle in round 3 is a rare player that you can get at that spot that has crazy upside. Like, bet on talent, bet on situation, bet on age. Waddle checks all those boxes, and don't fade him just because of what happened last year. That's one of the biggest rookie mistakes that you can make in fantasy football. You have to reset your brain. If he burned you last year, like, get over it. That's how you lose in fantasy football, is being like, oh, that guy was terrible last year, so he's going to do nothing this year. That is a completely poor mindset. Waddle is a smash bet, a smash pick in round 3. If you're about to draft in the next couple of days, reach for him. Be aggressive getting him on your team. And if he's already on your roster, good work. At number 9, Jonathan Brooks, rookie running back for the Panthers. Yes, he's coming off a torn ACL. Yes, he's been placed in the PUP. He's going to miss at least the first 4 games. But this is a guy that you draft in round 9, round 10, plus that you are going to save for the end of the season when you need him the most. This is not a running back that you're drafting at this spot that you're trying to count on the first part of the season because you're going to be very disappointed. This is a guy who is going to surge, who's going to take you over the top in November and in December. He's a big back with a 3-down skill set, 6 feet tall, 207 pounds. His final year at Texas, 1,300 total yards, 11 touchdowns, 6.1 yards per carry. This is a back that can do it all on a Carolina team that has 2 mediocre, at best, running backs in Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders, with a head coach in Dave Canales who just fed Rashad White the ball last year. Rashad had, I believe, the second most touches outside of Christian McCaffrey last season. So this is a running back that is really good, that can catch the ball, has a 3-down skill set, that's young. Yes, he's coming off an ACL, but we've seen guys like Breece Hall really get going to the middle, late end of the season. Brooks could have a similar story as Todd Gurley when he came off a torn ACL. You don't want to miss out on guys like this who don't have a lot of risk for where you're drafting them. These are guys that you're betting on later in the season. He's in a poor running back room, so once he gets on the field and he gets into the swing of things, he's going to be the RB1 with a head coach that we know loves to feed the running back on a Carolina offense that should be better this year than it was last year. Bet on Jonathan Brooks. Stash him in your IR, and he will help you when you need him the most. At number 8, Rashid Rice. This guy has been a steal in drafts, mainly because everyone is like, oh, he's going to get suspended. He's going to miss potentially half of the season. It's not looking like that is going to happen, but I am not like, I don't know for sure. Like, from everything that I've read in terms of the legal case, it's probably going to get pushed to this offseason, but there is still some risk drafting Rice because something could happen the middle of the season. So keep that in mind. But once Kansas City gave Rice a full-time role last season from week 12 on, he was the wide receiver 9, averaging 7 catches, 86 yards, and 18.5 fantasy points per game. At times last year, it felt like Mahomes was looking for Rice more than he was Kelsey. I know it's a crowded wide receiver room with Hollywood Brown entering the picture, Xavier Worthy, but you have to understand that Worthy and Brown are not the same wide receivers as Rice. Rice is the intermediate short possession type of receiver. Hollywood and Xavier are the deep threats. So I think those two guys are going to help open up the field for Rice. And it's always smart to attack young, talented players and good offenses with really good quarterbacks, like the best quarterback on the planet. I want as many pieces of this Kansas City offense as I can get, and Rice is my favorite to do so. Rice was also 6th in targets inside the 10-yard line, so double-digit touchdowns this year seems like a lock. If you don't mind taking a little bit of a risk because the upside is wild with Rice, he's absolutely your guy. Go after and get Rashid on your team. At number 7, Jordan Love. I don't understand this. I think a lot of people think that what happened with Love the second half of the season is just like some fluke or something, because this guy is flying under the radar. And this is a guy who was the quarterback 5 in fantasy last year. And the disrespect is crazy on Love, who is on an offense that's going to be better with a young wide receiver core that's only going to improve. Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd in the backfield, a really good coach, a really good ecosystem in Green Bay. I love taking Love in round 7, round 8 because of the spot that he's in, and he's also going to get better in his second year as a starter. Like, he's been in the league for several years now, but last year was his first year starting, and he was the quarterback 5 in fantasy. Like, I don't understand the disconnect that people have with Love. It's not a fluke. What he did last year is real. This guy is an ascending superstar. From week 11 on last year, when he caught absolute fire, and that's like everyone's like, oh, it's such a short, small sample size. Well, it continued into the playoffs as well. He shredded the Dallas defense that's supposed to be one of the best. Like, this is far from a fluke. And from week 11 on last year, he led the NFL in QBR, touchdown to interception ratio, and total touchdowns while completing 70% of his passes, and was the quarterback 3 in fantasy over that stretch. He's also the 3rd quarterback in NFL history with 4,000 passing yards, 30-plus touchdown passes, and a playoff win in his first season as a starter. Like, he was only 2nd in passing touchdowns behind Dak Prescott with 32, and he offers upside with his legs as well. He had 4 rushing touchdowns for 247 yards. So you get a little bit of the rushing upside, which is obviously a cheat code for quarterbacks in fantasy. What's there not to like? A guy who has already showed us last year that he's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. He can run the football. He has an insane amount of weapons in a good Packers offense with a good offensive line that is only going up from here. Whoever is smart enough to draft Jordan Love, he's going to return a ton of value at his ADP. I put hours of work and research into these videos. All I ask is if you guys can please subscribe to the channel, like this video. It helps me out more than you know. And more importantly, I want to help you guys win your league more than anything. I want to connect with you guys more than me just talking to a camera. So ask me a question, leave a comment down below, put your full roster down below. I would really appreciate it. At number 6, Jaylen Warren. This is a guy who is now coming off a hamstring injury. I feel like the industry has kind of cooled off on Jaylen, and I don't really understand why. Like, he was one of the best running backs in all of football last year from an advanced metric standpoint. 1st in missed tackles forced per attempt, 2nd in yards after contact per attempt, 3rd in explosive run rate, and now he's on a Steelers offense that has Arthur Smith as the OC, which we don't love, but what we know about Arthur is that he likes to just run the football every play. So that's going to benefit Warren here, and he likes to use the 2nd running back. He doesn't like to use the starter. He didn't use Bijan last year. He preferred Algier, so maybe he doesn't use Najee and prefers Warren, but Jaylen is an do-it-all back. He's good on the ground, obviously. He's good through the air. As he was 5th in targets among running backs, I think Russell Wilson will check it down to him a bunch. He could be really good in fantasy if Pittsburgh unleashes him, if they give him more work, which they should. They really need to. There should not be a 50-50 split. But if they don't, like I said, this offense is going to be so run-heavy that I think that's going to benefit both Warren and Najee. I just prefer to take the better running back, the more explosive running back, the more efficient running back, who you can get in rounds 9, 10, that if something happens to Najee or they just give him more work Jaylen has top 12, top 10 upside at the position. At number 5, Nico Collins. I know I've been a big Tank Dell guy on this channel, but what I've come to realize is I just want Dell and Collins everywhere I can get them. I don't even care if I get them on the same team. I just think this Houston offense is going to be electric. They're going to be one of the offenses that you want as many pieces of as you can get, with CJ Stroud at quarterback, who could realistically throw 50 passing touchdowns this year. That's how pass happy, that's how good I think this offense is going to be. And we already saw from Collins last season that he broke out last year. This guy is a stud. 3.1 yards per route run. That is one of the metrics that you look at when you're kind of deciphering if a wide receiver is actually good. So obviously he crushes that metric. He was wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game last year, while only playing 68% of the snaps. So Nico wasn't even really in a full-time role last season, and he dominated. And in the preseason, he's been playing 90% of snaps. But I think that's telling, and what's more telling is that the Texans gave him a $72 million contract this year. Money talks. Houston looks at him as the alpha wide receiver 1. I just think Diggs is going to be the odd man out. I think Diggs is one of the worst values in all of fantasy football drafts. Nico is the alpha on this team, attached to an ascending superstar in CJ Stroud. He's like a Calvin Johnson. This dude's 6'4", 220 plus pounds. Like, what's there not to like? He's a good route runner. He's got nice speed. He's tough to bring down. Like, it's silly if people are really going to fade this guy because of his cost. I don't mind taking him in round 3 because of the situation. And they're fading him because of Stephon Diggs, who's a 30-year-old receiver who's already showed us that he's declining, who couldn't get it done as the number 1 target in Buffalo, attached to Josh Allen. At number 4, Brian Robinson Jr., another guy that people are sleeping on because an older teammate is on the roster, and that's Austin Eckler, who, yes, he was hurt last year, but I just think Eckler is on his way out. I don't think he's going to be that good this year. I don't think he's going to get a ton of work either. Everything that I've seen from this new coaching staff and Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, they love Robinson and they want to use them as their workhorse back. And we know last year how much of a train wreck this Washington offense was, from the offensive line to the play calling, literally everything. And Robinson was still the RB14 in fantasy points per opportunity, 13th in yards after contact per attempt, 22nd in explosive run rate. And I think this next one is going to surprise people the most. 5th in yards per route run. He's a better pass catcher than you think. He caught 36 of 40 passes, 10.2 yards per catch, 11.4 yards after the catch per reception. He had 4 receiving touchdowns. And now he's in a Washington offense that I think is going to be a lot better, mainly because of the new coaching staff and Jaden Daniels, who was the number 2 quarterback picked in the draft. Daniels is going to be this year's CJ Stroud. I think this Washington offense is going to take a massive leap. Robinson is going to be a big part of it. You're telling me you can get a workhorse back on an offense that should be improved in round 10? He is one of the biggest steals of drafts, especially if you like to use the 0 RB strategy or grab running backs late. He is your guy. At number 3, DK Metcalf, another offense that I want as many pieces of as I can get. The Seattle offense, I think, is going to explode this year with new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. And DK, if you just look back at his career, it just feels like every season he has an opportunity to just absolutely go off, and he doesn't seem to get there for one reason or another. Pete Carroll's offense last couple of years has been very run-heavy, run-focused. I feel like they haven't had an offensive coordinator or a coach who's been able to completely unleash DK, and I just think we see that this season with Grubb, with a healthy offensive line, with a revamped offensive line. Geno Smith is healthy, and the volume is just going to be there. Like, that's always been the biggest knock on DK. Oh, he just doesn't get enough targets because they've been so run-focused. But Grubb's coming over from the University of Washington, ranked 1st and 2nd in passing yards per game and top 5 in pass attempts both years. Feels like a year that DK is going to go crazy with Tyler Lockett pretty much at the end of his career. JSN is also another one of my favorite players to draft. But DK has 14 touchdown, 1,400 receiving yard upside. He just has the talent. He has the skill set. He has the speed. He has the frame. Like, he has all the intangibles that you look for. He just hasn't had the right situation. I think he gets that this year. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. But I think he could have close to 100 receptions as well. So don't be afraid to get DK on your team. At number 2, Garrett Wilson. This is another guy that people are going to be so scared to draft because of the season that he's coming off, because he was a late first round, early second round pick last year, and he basically did nothing, but none of it was his fault. Like, Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles 4 plays into week 1 was devastating. I had a lot of Wilson shares. I was upset, and it just wasn't his fault. He had Zach Wilson at quarterback. He had to deal with the 30th ranked adjusted completion rate and 27th in catchable target rate last season. So he had trash quarterbacks on one of the worst offenses in football, behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. Like, it was just a complete disaster, and he still finished with 95 receptions and over 1,000 yards. And now he gets Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers back, who still has it. Like, people who are doubting Aaron Rodgers, yes, he's coming off a torn Achilles. Yes, he's 40 years old, but I just think he's different. Tom Brady played till he was 45. I think Rodgers is a different breed, and 40 for a quarterback these days, like, I think Rodgers has a couple years left in the tank. I don't think he's going to fall off the face of the earth. And if people are worried about Rodgers getting hurt, I think Tyrod Taylor is a very serviceable backup. He's better than anything you got from Zach Wilson last year. And this is just on an offense with a much improved offensive line. They've spent a lot in the draft and in free agency to revamp that unit. So it's going to be a better offense, which means longer sustained drives, scoring position often, with a Hall of Fame quarterback under center. Wilson has wide receiver 1 overall upside this year, and I am really excited to see him just break fantasy. And at number 1, talk about breaking fantasy. Devon Achane is most likely going to do just that this season. He's another guy that people are scared to draft. You can't win your league if you just pick safe players with no upside. That's not how you win. That's not how you beat the other 11 guys, the other 9 guys in your league. You need some edges. When I draft, I like to draft high upside guys, high floor guys, some safe picks, get a good mix. But Devon Achane is a guy you don't want to pass up on, who's the RB5 in fantasy points per game last year, averaging 7.8 yards per carry while ranking first in explosive run rate, second in yards after contact per attempt, third in missed tackles forced per attempt. Yes, his 7.8 yards per carry isn't going to hold up, right? I mean, that's not sustainable, but he's going to get more volume than you saw last year. Like, after coming off a fantastic rookie season, why would Miami be like, oh, we're going to give him less work? That doesn't make sense. Like, any player can get hurt at any time. Raheem Mostert, who's the RB1 on Miami, 32-year-old running back who's never played a full season himself. You're going to see a ton of Achane this year. They're going to put him in creative situations. He's going to be used in the passing game. And reportedly, he's already put on size, muscle mass this offseason. So if he gets to like 195 pounds, like, we'll take that. Like, he was at 188 last year. I'm sure he's put on weight because this is the second offseason, I believe, that he hasn't had to train for track and field. So he's in football shape. He looks bigger from pictures that I've seen. If he's 195 plus pounds, he could be the best running back in fantasy, in football this year because of the scheme that he's in, the explosive, efficient talent that he has on a really good Miami offense. Like, this is a guy I do not mind reaching for in round 2. Like, if you want to wait till round 3 to get him, he's most likely going to be gone. Give me Achane over Pacheco, Kyron, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, like Travis Etienne. Give me Achane over all of those guys. Chase upside. Don't be worried about injuries because, okay, then don't draft Christian McCaffrey if you're worried about injuries. Don't draft Saquon Barkley if you're worried about injuries. Like, don't look at it from that lens. Yes, injuries can happen. Injuries can happen to any player. I love Achane. There's some risk, but there is a ton of reward. And he's just a guy that I think a lot of people are going to be kicking themselves if they miss out on him this year. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you took anything from this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe, leave a like. It helps me more than you know. And I will see you in the next one.